A reliable method for eliminating decoder spikes is the technique called A. Strobing, B. Feeding, C. Wagging, D. Waving. The correct answer is strobing. A decade counter will count through decimal A. 10, B. 9, C. 15, D. 0. The correct answer is 9. One method of troubleshooting involves the circuit under test with a OR and then observing the output to check for proper bit patterns. A. Checking voltmeter ohmmeter. B. Exercising stimulus test pattern. C. Testing scope logic analyzer. D. Smashing hammer axe. The correct answer is exercising stimulus test pattern. In VHDL, if we need to remember a value, it must be stored in A function, B type declaration, C variable, D process. The correct answer is function. A glitch that appears on the decoded output of a ripple counter is often difficult to see on an oscilloscope because A. It is a random event. B. It occurs less frequently than the normal decoded output. C. It is very fast. D. All of the above. The correct answer is all of the above. It is a characteristic of ring counters that they equal to the number of flip-flops in the register. A. Number of invalid states is. B. Number of case statements is. C. Modulus is. D. Other states are. The correct answer is modulus is. Many parallel counters use presetting whereby the counter is preset on the active transition of the same clock signal that is used for counting. A. Feedback. B. Synchronous. C. Ripple. D. Asynchronous. The correct answer is synchronous. A. D. Flip-flop can be made to toggle by A. Connecting to Q to D. B. Connecting to Q to D. C. Connecting D low. D. Connecting D high. The correct answer is connecting to Q to D. And one shot starts a pulse in response to a trigger and will restart the internal pulse timer every time a subsequent trigger edge occurs before the pulse is complete. A. Non-retriggerable. B. Retriggerable. C. High-level triggered. D. Edge triggered. The correct answer is retriggerable. Assume you want to determine the timing diagram for a 4-bit counter using an oscilloscope. The best choice for an oscilloscope trigger signal is A. The most significant bit MSB. B. The least significant bit LSB. C. The clock signal. D. From a composite of the MSB and LSB. The correct answer is the clock signal. Assume a 4-bit ripple counter has a failure in the second flip-flop such that it locks up. The third and fourth stages will A. Continue to count with correct outputs. B. Continue to count but have incorrect outputs. C. Stop counting. D. Turn into molten silicon. The correct answer is stop counting. In order to use a shift register as a counter, the register's serial input is the counter input and the serial output is the counter output. B. The parallel inputs provide the input signal and the output signal is taken from the serial data output. C. Serial in serial out register must be used. D. The serial output of the register is connected back to the serial input of the register. The correct answer is the serial output of the register is connected back to the serial input of the register. In order to check the CLR function of a counter, A. Apply the active level to the CLR input and check all of the Q outputs to see if they are all in their reset state. B. Ground the CLR input and check to be sure that all of the Q outputs are low. C. Connect the CLR input to VCC and check to see if all of the Q outputs are high. D. Connect the CLR to its correct active level while clocking the counter. Check to make sure that all of the Q outputs are toggling. The correct answer is: apply the active level to the CLR input and check all of the Q outputs to see if they are all in their reset state. An asynchronous binary up counter made from a series of leading-edge triggered flip-flops can be changed to a down counter by A. Taking the output on the other side of the flip-flops instead of Q. B. Clocking of each succeeding flip-flop from the other side instead of Q. C. Changing the flip-flops to trailing edge triggering. D. All of the above. The correct answer is all of the above. A 4-bit binary up counter has an input clock frequency of 20 kHz. The frequency of the most significant bit is A. 1.25 kHz, B. 2.50 kHz, C. 160 kHz, D. 320 kHz. The correct answer is 1.25 kHz. Modulus refers to A method used to fabricate decade counter units. B. The modulus of elasticity or the ability of a circuit to be stretched from one mode to another. C. An input on a counter that is used to set the counter state such as UP down. D. The maximum number of states in a counter sequence. The correct answer is the maximum number of states in a counter sequence. A sequential circuit design is used to A. Count up, B. Count down, C. Decode and end count, D. Count in a random order. The correct answer is count in a random order. The Mod 10 counter is also referred to as a counter. A. Decade, B. Strobing, C. BCD, D. Circuit. The correct answer is decade. In general, when using a scope to troubleshoot digital systems, the instrument should be triggered by the A channel or channel 1. B. The vertical input mode when using more than one channel. C. The system clock. D. Line sync in order to observe troublesome power line glitches. The correct answer is the system clock. Counters are often used whenever pulses are to be counted and the results displayed in decimal. A. Synchronous, B. Bean, C. Decade, D. BCD. The correct answer is BCD. The technique used by one-shots to respond to an edge rather than a level is called A. Level management, B. Edge triggering, C. Trigger input, D. Edge trapping. The correct answer is level management. A JK flip-flop is reset and must stay reset after the clock pulse. This transition requires that AJ and K inputs must both 0. BJ must be 0, K doesn't matter. CJ doesn't matter, K must 0. DJ must be 0 and K must be 1. The correct answer is J must be 0, K doesn't matter. The counter in the Ultra library has controls that allow it to count up or down and perform synchronous parallel load and asynchronous cascading. A. 74134, B. LPM, C. Synchronous, D. VHDL. The correct answer is LPM. A BCD counter has states A8, B9, C10, D11. The correct answer is 10. The decimal equivalent of the largest number that can be stored in a 4-bit binary counter is A8, B15, C16, D32. The correct answer is 15. The minimum number of flip-flops that can be used to construct a modulus 5 counter is A3, B5, C8, D10. The correct answer is 3. The duty cycle of the most significant bit from a 4-bit 09 BCD counter is A10, B20, C50, D80. The correct answer is 20. Shift register counters use, which means that the output of the last FF in the register is connected back to the first FF in some way. A. Mod. B. Feedback. C. Strobing. D. Switchbacks. The correct answer is feedback. Asynchronous counters are often called counters. A. Toggle. B. Ripple. C. Binary. D. Flip-flop. The correct answer is ripple.